it'll be nice engagement with a small group. Well, to get started, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Kyle Martin. I'm a high school principal here. And so I'm just going to get tonight started off with our strategic planning process. There's 2 sessions tonight. One's at 5. We had originally 5 people signed up. 7 o'clock has about 20, I think, roughly, signed up as well. So we currently, as a district, have a mission, which is our EPIC, which is our Engage, Prepare, Inspire, and Challenge. So through the strategic planning process, that's really focusing more on the vision as we look into the future of the school district. So that's what's being discussed. We had a meeting last night with about 30 to 35, 40 individuals here in the same room last night discussing the process as well. Just to talk a little bit about our 2 guests here, Dr. Summers and Jim Lay. I'll have Dr. Summers introduce Jim and say a little bit about him, but Dr. Summers is leading the strategic planning process and has a lot of experience working as a superintendent and also working with the Ohio Department of Education. So Dr. Summers has a lot of experience working in the school system, but also at the state level, and actually 2 different states, with Ohio and with Oklahoma, correct? Right. So I'll have Dr. Summers come up a little bit here in just a couple seconds and also introduce Jim Lay as well. I also want to introduce one of our board members, Jamie Belanger is here. So he serves on our board. And we have 3 central office employees in the back. We have John Pinnell, who does Director of Operations, Tara Floyd, who is our Chief Financial Officer, and then Gary Hester, who is Human Resources Director. So, Dr. Summers?
Oh, very good, very good. Well, big crowd. I'm glad you got tickets. Is there anybody scalping them out?
I was going to ask if they had trouble parking or anything.
Yeah, any parking problem. We appreciate you coming out. I understand that there's a lot to life and lots of excitement, and sometimes strategic planning is not the most exciting thing to think about, but the future of Springboro is very important. Springboro City Schools, they're an A school district, but can they be even better is the question at the table. And so what we're going to do is work through, Jim Lay will work through basically an analysis of what you're thinking about, what's important to you, and what are our challenges and that sort of thing. I will follow up with a couple of specific documents that we want to get your feedback on. To give you a quick feel, you're a part of 6 meetings. You're one of 6 meetings that we're having as open sessions for community, business people, parents, faculty and staff, and students. There's a 25-member strategic advocacy group that meets on a regular basis over a period of time actually started in January and will go through May. And also the ultimate documents and creations. By the way, the senior leadership meets a couple of times each month to work through a series of documents. And then ultimately it'll come down to the board and the administration making decisions about what comes out of all the input, the opportunities for improvement, the direction, and everything else. So the actual process for approving final documents will come, the current target is around May. So just give you a feel for where you sit. We're very interested in one thing tonight, and that's what the 3 of you want to think about and what your thoughts are. And we're going to kind of walk through a series of questions. And the goal is at the end of the day, you tell us what we need to know to put into the documents and into the feedback as we make plans for Springboro City Schools. Jim Lay, I've known Jim for a very long time. He helped me in a past life as superintendent to move school district to the highest performing, lowest cost, and largest of our type. He has a long history in strategic planning and organizational design. He's also served, he not only just does it, what do you call yourself?
An organizational tourist.
An organizational tourist, so you roam through the tour, but he also has run an actual organization, a retirement community, as CEO, so he had a chance to turn that organization around. So has deep understanding as well as a lot of intellectual and experience with the process, and he's going to kind of lead the first part of the conversation. So, and if you could, maybe come down a little closer, and since there's so many of us.
I have short arms, so I can't reach. If you sit in the first 3 rows, you're still okay. Good afternoon. I was in a session where a individual who was talking about how do you really get the information you need out of an audience, especially on such an important project. And he said, you hold the meeting in the least convenient spot at the worst possible time. And you find out who your committed individuals are. Well, I know 4 of them because you came to the lesser convenient one tonight. And so I know we've got something special to hear from you. So I'm looking forward to what you have to say. The other thing I'll tell you about myself is I served a 4-year term as the member and president of the Board of Education in the Northwest Local Schools in the northwestern part of Hamilton County. I understand your world, Jamie, and I understand the districts from that unique experience, which has helped me greatly. As Bob mentioned, I work with all kinds of organizations. Organizations have very, very common perspectives that they need to raise in order to understand how to deliver to the customer that they exist to serve. And you, as parents, have a very unique positioning in looking at that customer from another perspective than administrators, tourists like myself who come in and make observations. So we really want to hear from you tonight. I really encourage, with 4 of you, you're stuck in the situation of, I'm not going to let you shrink into the background and not notice that you haven't said anything. I really want to hear what you have to say, but I'll guide that in terms of what kind of things we want. So here's what I'd ask. Let's start here. What led you to come to this session? You said, I see this opportunity, I need to be there. Tell us who you are. What, obviously, I'm guessing as parents, you have children in the district or children headed to the district. Tell us who you are, about the folks you have who are part of the school community, and what led you to come tonight. And any one of the 4 of you who wants to start can do so.
I'll start. My name is Lynn Greenberg. I have 4 children still in the district, 1 who's graduated. So I range from a junior, freshman, and 2 fifth graders, so I'm kind of up the span. I've been active and involved for 8 or 9, 10 years, something like
great.
that. So I've come to a lot of these.
Good. Glad
As
you
part of
did.
Epic, I've been a part of all the other stuff, so I'm always interested in this.
Okay. And so what led you to come is, I am interested in this district and it means something personal to me. Okay, great. Can I just direct this
Sure,
there?
I'll go next. I'm Jackie Harvey,
Hi, Jackie.
and my youngest of 3 daughters is at Springboro High School, sophomore. We've had 2 older daughters graduate through Springboro schools.
Great.
I come with a couple of lenses. First of all, as a parent, and second of all, as an educator. So I've been an educator for 20 years, and that's how long we've been in Springboro.
Okay.
So,
What role as an educator?
I'm a 4th grade teacher in Centerville Schools.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I just recently received my master's in educational leadership, and I'm pursuing principal. So I'm here like from both of those
Right.
lenses as a
Okay.
parent. My husband and I have always trusted Springboro schools. As my youngest daughter has gone through, we're seeing some differences. So
Okay.
I'm here to understand from multiple perspectives, her perspective, and then from Springboro's educational perspective. And
Okay.
then also for a little selfish reason, because I want to see what the strategic planning session looks like from an administrator's point of view.
Okay.
Potential administrator.
Good, great,
Okay.
great. That's great. So we get 2 for 1 in terms of this experience and the perspective on feedback.
Yeah,
See?
I'm here to kind of learn.
Okay, so are we.
Okay.
So are we. So we're going to share that together.
Okay, thanks.
Gentlemen, I'll let you flip for it.
I can go. I'm Joe Knieven. I have 2 children who, if everything goes to plan, would graduate in 10 and 13 or 14 years respectively.
Do you say that with trepidation, if everything goes to plan?
Well, a decade's a long time, an awful lot could happen, Shoot, for all we know, they could change the structure of K-12 education in that time frame.
Yeah. That is a long time in today's world,
It
isn't it?
is rather, yes. And so I guess I come from two perspectives. One is that selfish perspective of strategic planning is arguably about where we want to be in the future.
Mhm.
And I have a long future in front of me with Springboro Schools, number one. And then the other side is I'm a public library director and have been for more than a decade. And from my experience in library land, I kind of have a little bit of an understanding of the importance of actually doing strategic planning. So I feel like I need to be a part of this, in part because I understand why it's important, why it would be better if this room were full as opposed to four of us, in terms of the schools getting a good strategic plan put together.
Well, that's interesting. You're in a field where external factors have changed your world.
Oh, yeah, very dramatically. I've worked in libraries for 20 years, and
Great.
I saw some of the changes coming, but it's amazing how much faster they've come than I ever imagined.
Yeah. And so you're sending us a foreboding message there to remember.
Well, I'm actually, from my perspective, I'm rather grateful for the job that folks like you guys do, because I have about 1/100th the mandates coming down from the state and federal level on top of me as you do. And every single day I have far less responsibility. I don't like to put it that way, but it's true. I don't have hundreds of souls gathering in one place that I gotta try to prepare for the world.
Yeah. Well,
It's an important job and a more difficult job than most people appreciate, I think.
Well, one thing that you really highlight from the perspective of a strategic planner is the perspective that most have is that a strategic plan tells you where you want to be. And the answer is no, it tells you where you have to be. Because there are too many forces and factors, which we're going to dig into a little bit later on, that regulate, and I mean that with the lowercase r, that regulate your options and yet force you to achieve in a different way from a relevance and impact standpoint. That's your world, isn't it?
I mean,
Yeah, okay?
things are changing daily. Sometimes people in my profession have the luxury of ignoring them, but that comes back to haunt the next person.
Okay. Save the best for last, is that
Yeah.
right? Okay.
My name is Dave Slammer. I also come from a couple different perspectives. I've got a third grader at 5 Points in the kindergarten next year.
Okay.
My wife's a teacher in the district. She's been here her entire career, loves the district, loves her job.
Okay.
And we just moved into the district last year.
Okay.
So coming from that perspective, I'm also an educator. I'm a middle school principal in a neighboring district. And
Okay.
we actually 2 years ago went through the entire strategic plan process. I think in total it was 6 to 7 months that we spent. It was a different organization we went through, but reading it, process looking like it was pretty much the same. And I would say as we are now rolling through year 2 of it, the biggest thing for me is if we're waiting on like the epiphany to happen, it's not gonna be right in your face, but our day-to-day has certainly changed, and decisions we make all geared towards that plan, whereas before it was just kind of grab and pull, and if this works great, if that works great, if not, then we try over and try again. So I guess the biggest reason I'm here is A, was on my way home, and B,
Okay. Pragmatic
yeah,
is always
hey,
good.
I want to turn around and come back, but no, the biggest reason is any way that I can help at
Okay.
all the
Great.
process. It was the best professional development career thing I feel like I've been a part of, and really engaging in the community that I work in since I don't live there. So now that this is the community that I do live in, I want to try to be as involved as possible.
I just want to probe with what you said with your role, in your vocational role, your wife's, and you moved into the district. There was a lot of choice that was coming together in that. What were the factors that led you to say, we're going to move to Springboro when our kids are at the place where they're really starting to continue?
Yeah, so the biggest element of it, it's kind of twofold. One, we were 11 schools.
Okay?
we liked it. We enjoyed, you know, the experience we were having. But for us to have the opportunity for our children and my wife to be in the same location was huge. And on top of it, you know, knowing what we, you know, as educators, you have, I guess, a little more insider perspective on districts and I know for some people, maybe they feel, and again, she's got 13 years here, but this is only a year into the district. In this greater Dayton area, there's not much of a better location than what we have here in the programs that are available and what, you know, how money's spent, and I know it's always the great equalizer in any district, but if you look at what you get out of here versus where you go, might go other places, but they're spending $5,000 more a kid. You know, the equity is.
So there's a return on investment that comes into your consideration.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, that's question number one. I've got some things I want to do scripted for making sure we get the exact information we need, but I want to open the floor first to each of you to answer this question. What is it that we need to be sure to hear from you? What do we need to know? What were you compelled to make sure you got to us tonight? Because we want that information at the top of the heap. We can talk about my script in a little bit for the purposes of the process, but I want to let you own the script at the beginning. Anybody can jump in. Any of you. What was it that was sitting that we haven't hit? And of course, the process, clearly you want to learn something about us in terms of process and role. But as you observe, and let's just say you can praise, you can say this is a gap, this is a problem. Any observation that you say, man, I would not have done my job if I remember this in the parking lot, I want to deliver it in here. Anything that comes to mind. Let's do this. We'll save that question because I want you thinking about it going through. But we'll go into what I want to look at with you this evening. We're going to go through a process which in strategic planning, historically, traditional, everybody goes through it. It's called a SWOT analysis. SWOT is S-W-O-T. So it's not exactly spelled correctly in the context of what you want to perform in the test, but it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. We're trying to paint a picture of the environment in which the schools are operating. Strengths and weaknesses are from a position of internal perspective. That is, look at the district. What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses? Opportunities and threats are external to the organization. Something you can grab, something that will grab you. You've dealt with a lot of external pressures, for example, in the library operation that has redefined how you have to work, and yet you have to keep the old working while the new flourishes. You're meeting those kinds of external challenges. I want to start on the internal side, and I'll ask the question this way. What does this district do well? When you tell people about it, what do you tell them when you're really in praise of what Springboro schools do well? Silence is scary.
I'll start. I mean, I think it has responded well to the needs of the students, and I'm going to go particularly with the gifted population. Having such a high number of gifted students, there's other districts that have similar numbers that do not have the level of programming
Okay.
that Springboro does have.
Okay.
And in full disclosure, that's one, my wife's a GIS, so I hear about it at home, but I also see it. And having a gifted student at home, that is a big piece of what drew us here as well.
Okay.
They didn't have that same level of programming at Lebanon that they do.
So it was good to better, so to
Yeah,
speak.
you know, and again, I'm not disparaging what they're doing over there. It was a great experience, but seeing that opportunity certainly drew us.
Okay. What about others?
I'm thinking, just high expectations of all learners just, I get the impression that staff members want their students to achieve. I also see some realistic, probably more, I've seen from my youngest one, more realistic with developmental and curriculum at the younger, more so than the high school experience recently.
Okay.
So I think those are really strong pieces, like, when I say developmental, is it the sixth grade building? Now, what, is it a intermediate? Yes, the sixth grade building. So impressed with the transition from the 2-5 into the 7-8, like, what a great experience.
Okay, so that transition is, tell me, I'm not a student of the history, how new is that? Has that been around a while? Okay.
But they've changed it over the years, like
Yeah,
my
it's-
oldest to
yeah.
my freshman,
Yeah.
the process was different for all three of my girls.
Yeah,
Okay.
Through.
yeah.
So
Well,
it's
that
an-
building, like, all three of my girls went into that building at different grades.
Okay. Okay.
So,
But I'm hearing then a thread of a strength being that it continues to transition but meet needs
I
at
think they
the
were
same
good to
time.
be responsive to the needs and the
Yeah.
development changes.
Yeah.
And recognizing, so for example, when my oldest went through, the gifted program was not as embraced as it was. It started with my second one that went through, the junior, and then my freshman. Now, it was a great experience for her. It wasn't a great experience for my oldest one, but they've adapted and changes, and they've recognized, we continue to change with the acknowledgement that sixth graders are not eighth graders.
Yes.
Sixth graders are
Yes.
new, end of year fifth graders are still transitioning. I think they've added recess, they've done things to really acknowledge that they're still kids.
So I hear a transition out and a transition in.
As well as
Taking place.
addressing the gifted stuff too. They didn't really address it in the past, and so they've done a good job of trying to reach all kids there too.
so the academic, and then, like, in that sixth grade building, just keeping in mind that social emotional piece, while still kind of being a little protective, gradually releasing them into the bigger pond.
I'm gonna try to translate up into a theme. I hear a whole student type of
Yeah,
element.
kind of like a whole child
Yeah,
at
okay.
different.
Trite as that may sound, but that's what
But I'm not, yeah, but.
it's bigger than the academics. Not that they've been sacrificed,
More
but
at the
there's more to
younger,
it than
yeah,
that.
more at the younger level, I feel, than at the high school.
Yeah, it sort of stops right
It
there. We don't
does.
continue to go
Like
Okay,
like
it's
so we're gonna come back on that
Yeah.
in the weakness side,
Mhm.
because there's something I wanna explore there. Let's work the strengths a little bit more.
Strengths.
Any other thoughts?
I can also say one more thing about sixth grade is adding a full-time counselor to that building has been a huge benefit through the years. We've seen, kids are going through a whole lot of stuff in sixth grade and a lot of changes, and whether it be familiar, working parent going back to work, all of those things. Having a counselor available full-time has made a huge difference.
So there's a recognition of life situations in the context of what they're,
The kids need more
Okay.
support there, because
okay.
being a counselor at elementary, being a counselor 6 through 12 is a very different thing, even though they encompass similar things, it's just very different
Okay.
as they get older, because academics.
What else? What else?
From what I've seen, there's really dedicated staff.
Great.
Like, they really, I know that sounds kind of trite to me, because I think, I would hope that all educators.
We know one of them is, don't we?
All educators genuinely care about the students, but just the experience I've seen, which admittedly is very limited to limited to two buildings at this point. And also making there does seem to be an effort, I don't know, more of an effort than I would have expected was possible to address the kids' needs as they come up, and kind of even on an ongoing basis. I'm thinking of some of the things, it kind of goes back to counseling, like what I've seen with my son at 5 Points, where like he came into second grade with a terror of fire drills. And I think he's pointed out that there's a counselor who helps with like kids that are experiencing unusual amounts of stress, who seems to show up in his classroom right about the time of fire drills, the first several that they've had. And so, the point being though, that little that little bit of support there, I think, has gotten him to a place where he's comfortable with what needs, with something that needs to happen on a monthly basis for student safety, and I'm sure to comply with one or another regulation.
But the compliance is the, do you do it, not how you do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I hear you
Because,
differentiate.
you know, there's finite resources, and he's one little boy out of, I don't know how many hundreds are in that building.
Cool. Other thoughts from a strength perspective? You don't have to be flowing with everything I can think of. I'm just wanting to keep the bridge working.
So, does that include, athletics?
The Springboro District, what is it good
Yeah,
at?
I mean, I think that, again, there's a strong athletics program, so I think that's a strength.
Mhm.
I think that there could be some, you know, it's a double-edged sword, so with that comes some, with the expectations, some stress that is dealt with for kids today with the demands. So with excellence comes those demands, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, so it's
in
the
the
key's working the edge of
athletic
that
piece,
in an
yeah.
appropriate way, pushing them as far as you can, but not pushing them over the edge.
Yeah, which connects to that counseling piece.
Mhm. Okay.
And then, just from a social media standpoint, I'm really impressed with the communication that that has been put on, and I only check emails, so whatever I sign up for, I don't do Facebook, so I can't speak for that, but I love the emails, it's very informative, and it covers a lot of different avenues, so not only from like a Board of Education perspective, but I like the highlights, I like seeing, because my last one is a high schooler, I do like to see what's continuing to happen that's great in the elementary and younger buildings. And I like to see like the spotlights on the kids, what they're doing, as far as the technology pieces, the destination imagination, those other pieces that I don't necessarily get exposure to with my child in high school, so I love that communication piece.
Okay.
Like, as a resident, it makes me proud that we're doing those things in our schools, and the outreach that is happening in what I've seen at the elementary, the community, like getting those kids involved out there with community
Okay.
pieces,
Mhm.
that makes me proud as a resident.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
So I'll second what she was saying about and I don't do social media either, but the
I
consistency.
think we're a growing population that does, and I have kindred spirits here.
Consistency and timing of the communication that seemed at least, not only from the building, like I said, from 5 Points, but, only from the perspective of one, but yeah, the district coming out with some very consistent, that's how I even learned about this. It wasn't to my wife, it was I got an email and realized, and started reading into it a little bit more, but it's a consistent
Good.
nature. And also, I do find the community pride to be pretty strong for the most part. Having young enough kids that we're not really into the sports yet. My daughter a little bit, but even her second grade softball team that she was a part of, they were proud to wear Springboro colors and things of that nature. And I do, this might sound weird to a guy that doesn't live in the district that he works in, but this is a destination. I think it's become a destination type of location for a lot of people. So that draw-in helps as well. But you kind of, we live in a growing neighborhood that has a lot of different, not just people who grew up in Springboro State, there are people from all around the Dayton, Cincinnati country. But the school still, it feels as though it's kind of that culminating force in the community. Yeah, we may be from different places, but we've got this one.
Okay, so this is kind of a uniting force.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to move to weaknesses. You can still give me these later, but I want to go right to your issue over there that you started us into weaknesses. I'd love to hear what you were thinking. As you talked about the high school experience.
Yeah, different. I feel like my youngest one is experiencing a greater amount of academic stress in the sense of how the instruction, how the curriculum is choosing to be instructed within not only the core classes, but also in some of the elective pieces. Packets of vocabulary, kind of like that binge and purge on vocabulary. I feel like there's better practices to get see vocabulary. If kids today want to know a vocabulary word or an event, they're going to Google it. So it's, to me, more about the bigger picture, the generalizations of a time period and an effect versus you need to fill out 4 pages of vocabulary and have it ready with you for the midterm exam or the quarter semester exam if you want to be successful on this. That filling out and taking hours and hours to complete that to as a companion piece to an exam deflates the motivation of enjoying the collaborative, and I just think there's possibilities out there that need to be explored for better practices for where our high schoolers are at. They're very digitally driven. I think that there could be more collaborative pieces that could be included, and really, really revisiting what our high school graduates need to be able to do as 21st century productive citizens.
Okay, so I'm hearing, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm trying to capsulize the thought. I'm hearing a traditional approach in a world that's changed. Does that capture it? I'm hearing learning that is required, not fun, not meaningful.
Right, they don't see the relevance in
Okay.
filling out vocabulary packets when there's things that are happening in their world that could be looked at as problem-based learning, to get them more actively involved and excited about being future citizens.
Kind of a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
That's what
Like-
that's the thread. I've noticed the
they're-
nods in front.
They're our
repeatedly.
future, they're our future citizens, and we've got to get them engaged in being problem solvers now to get them invested in how they're gonna be that in the future.
I would say, my daughters talk about the fact that several teachers will kind of put a concept in the board and then say, go find it. Now, it's almost counter what she's saying, but I don't feel like they're then engaging the kids in the classroom. They're expecting these kids to be self-taught, perform at like a college level.
Self-taught.
And yet they're still, they're still coming into high school and learning,
How to be learners.
how to be learners. We have kids who come in because of the gifted, they're coming in at a higher level for, say, math, but they've never been at the high school. They may have taken a high school level course at the junior high, but they really haven't been a high school student to have a high school exam taught by a high school teacher in the high school classroom with older kids, with maturity, that kind of thing. So sometimes I have a concern about my younger boys who are gonna come in at junior level math as freshmen, and I can guarantee they're not going to act like a junior. So I worry
Personal
about that.
experience.
So I worry about that, and I think a lot about how, so we were saying before, is how 6th grade and the lower grades have all adapted, and they're constantly being asked to jump through hoops for different, third grade reading guarantee or other things, but it's sort of stagnant up above. We try to bring in new concepts, but it doesn't feel like it's translated all the way through. CCP, bringing Christian, I think those are great opportunities. I just don't know that the teachers are adapting to that, and the fact, the other thing that it actually goes back to one of these I want to say is the parent engagement. I talked to a principal one time who said kids today have always had a voice in their families. They weren't raised like we were, which is dad said this is the end, or mom said this, and that's it. There's no questioning.
I tried that too.
Our kids have had a voice, they've had opinions, they've had a say. And I said the flip side of that is that parents have been engaged. And some may be helicopter parents, or some just may be involved, but when I look at colleges and stuff, I said, I'm just as financially vested in their future for financial reasons, or as I've said for more years than that even, is that I have a long-term vested interest in my child's success. The teacher has a small piece of that, and so I need to be engaged all through the 12 years or beyond. So I want people to understand, parents do have to be involved and engaged.
There's an inherent assumption in there that I want to make sure that we bring into our process, and that is that the objective should be shared for the child's success, not for just the academic, meeting the target, so to speak. There was something in there I just want to explore with you, when you talked about coming into high school to math, junior level in math. Am I hearing a too much too fast?
I don't have concerns with that.
Okay. I
Mine
just
are
want-
fine, but I do know other parents have that concern.
Okay.
Kind of piggyback on what I said into that, like, if they take those higher level at the junior high, it is taught by a junior high teacher who understands junior high kids. So it's split up, like, for example, algebra. When my older daughter took algebra, both of them, the exams are split over 2 days. Well, that's not how the high school works. So to have a high school experience for them, like, oh, they've already done this before. They really haven't. They really have not.
I think you're
It's just taught at different levels, and as it should be, and I know we want to foster independence, but at the same time, when the kids are into trouble, who are they gonna come back to at home? We're the ones dealing with the crying and the sleepless nights and the cranky mornings and.
Okay. District challenges or weaknesses?
So, no, go ahead.
So I'll kind of piggyback off that a little bit, and I'll preface it by saying I'm not a person who believes just in unbuilding spending and open pocketbook and everything like that, but I do know that the district I work in is about half the size of this, and our central office has about 2 less people in it. So for the size, the just man resources, man and woman, sorry, human resources, yeah, sorry, are lesser than even a much smaller district. Now, on the flip of that, you want to get a return on your investment. So if you hire somebody, you want to know that it's,
One impact.
I don't want to pay any more tax than anybody else if we're not going to get what we expect out of it. So I don't have high school. I've spent no time in the high school. My wife's been in elementary the entire time, so I can't speak on that. But I know the challenge we face with our resources, doubling the population, and not saying you need to double the resources, but not grow in kind. That has to be a huge challenge to keep up with, and throw on top of it the community, and rightfully so, is what drew us here. Part of what drew us here has an extremely high level of expectation, which is great because it fosters, it fosters the expectations that we need for our kids to make it at the next level. So
But
it's
what I'm hearing
double-edged.
over here, it's not just a what, it's a how also.
Very much the how, for
Right.
me.
Okay.
Very much the how.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I just try to make sure I want to capture your thoughts accurately, and that's the juxtaposition I'm hearing here. Expectations are great. There are 2 ways to meet them, the right way and the wrong way. It's more than just meeting them. It's what I'm hearing you say, and I'm not hearing that as a criticism. I'm hearing it more as a, don't let this get past you in your
Right,
thinking.
Right, that there's
Okay.
a window of opportunity here, like.
Okay. Okay.
I think weaknesses, I see more, in my mind, there's more of a I'm seeing more structural things that I'm thinking about. The first being that currently in the current structure, students go through 5 buildings from pre-K to 12th grade. And I'm just thinking, some of the things I've heard suggest that that fewer is better in terms of the number of buildings that you have to transition children through over the years. Like I recall going through, I think, only 3 buildings in Northwest, actually,
Oh, okay.
a few decades ago.
Well, good. It's good to see a product that's been successful
Yeah.
in the long run. Thank you.
And I know this district has, like, I could sit here for hours and not come up with a good solution to that either. We have, in terms of weaknesses, another thing that I would say, that I would argue is a weakness, is we have 2 facilities that, if I'm any judge, one's getting on for 100 years old originally, and the other's well over 50 years old. And because we have a growing population, we're dependent on those facilities currently. And I don't know, I'm not confident that the community has the appetite for a capital levy right now.
Well, let's flip
And
that one
makes-
into
and
what's
that makes
happening
me-
here.
That makes me nervous thinking about the future of Springboro schools.
Okay, so when we look at opportunities and threats, those are the external factors.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting towards the external threats, aren't
That's okay, that's okay, I'm gonna play off the transition and run with it. So that community appetite for meaningful resource requirements is one that you're concerned about.
I'm nervous about this district having the financial resources it needs to maintain the sort of standards that it's achieved going forward in a situation where the community has very high expectations and the community is growing rapidly relative to other communities in Ohio.
Okay. What do others think? What are opportunities you see out there? I heard some of it from an internal curricular and or approach standpoint. You're living in a market where you've been changed by it, whether you wanted to or not. What are the factors that are out there that you see, man, we are going to have our radar on those things and we're gonna have to be addressing them? What are those threats that
It
you
has to be
see?
growth. It has to be growth. We already, I love the Early Learning Center and how we are able to keep kids there because unfortunately when the first graders were at the elementary, they were kind of left out because there's great reading guarantee, there's other things that teachers and the building has to go. So I love the early learning, but it's partly as a result of this growth. And while we think we're sort of slowing down, we're actually not. We're just in a lull. We're about to pick up. We have a new development going in behind Memory Gardens over on 48 Vital 5 Points. That's going to bring several hundred children into 5 Points, which is already pretty crowded. And then we've got a lot of development south and land to be developed south. So actually one of my concerns, again, to be brought up today was how are we going to prepare for this growth? Because years ago when we were involved before the last EPIC process before that, we did talk about growth and we had projections that by this year, our high school will be overcrowded. Now, CCP and things like that, College Credit Place, sorry, please don't know that, but it's my world right now. That's helped eliminate some of the overcrowding, but it's just shifted things. But we do have a growing population. We do have a hot commodity in Springboro schools. We do have high expectations. We deliver a good service. But while we have a very strong older community who's been strong and Springboro's built on that strength, it hasn't been always very supportive of our levies and paying out. And so you battle with your concerns because I've lived through 5 failed levies. And so it's a very valid concern. I'm happy with the last levy, we did a little restructure, but it doesn't mean we're not gonna need money and we need it soon. So that's my concern, is that we're not looking far enough ahead with the growth projections.
Okay, so that would be not only from just a financial projection, but I'm hearing a lot of community expectation that have to be managed and developed.
We've had class sizes at the 6th grade building and junior high that were excessive, and they made a few adaptations, but there's nowhere to go with that anymore, and the same thing's gonna happen at the high school as they go through. A small indication, Kyle's in here, is parking. We're running out of parking space at the high school. We run out very quickly, and, kids are going to school a little bit later, so sophomores are getting their license, and I don't know if you guys know how parking at the high school works, but the overflow is the junior high. So, which it's a rite of passage, so be it, my junior's parking there, and it's fine. But that's gonna max out and there will be nowhere to go. So that's just a small little piece of how we watch this overcrowding going. And the schools, the elementary schools and their size numbers, look at Clear Creek, we're adding on classrooms because we have the growth coming through. Those little ones are going to keep moving up. And are we preparing those buildings, 100-year-old one and such, in the classrooms where we can't expand? I have no interest in increasing class size. My kid's been in 40+ kids, so I don't want to go back there, but what are we doing to get ahead of it?
Okay. What other threats do you see coming at us, or what opportunities do you see that, man, we need to grab hold of this? And not from a negative standpoint, but this is what our kids need. I heard a lot of it from a curricular or an instructional design, but what about, market forces, market opportunities, things that are developing technology-wise? What do you see?
I would say, we live in Winding Creek, so it's one of those development centers that's just exploding, and continuing almost over to Lytle. I mentioned that it felt like we had the unifying force when everybody, came in maybe from out of, state or out of city, but make sure that's being capitalized, because those are gonna be your guest voters. We run into it's a very similar situation in our district. Our older fixed income families vote no every single time. Understandably so in a lot of ways. You know, we could spend all day talking about the funding issue in Ohio. But
Yeah,
That's-
actually,
that's
that
a-
right there is an external
That's another
threat.
meeting.
that's
threat.
yeah.
But that one's
Ohio
not
school
on it.
funding model.
That one
That's-
isn't on the
Something's coming.
sheet, that's the foundation of the issue.
Yeah, that is a foundational issue.
There is something coming,
But-
but it has to be on a committee for something, so something's coming.
But those families that are coming in that aren't on the fixed income capitalize on making sure
Oh,
they are fully engaged in a community that's gone from, I didn't grow up that far away. I remember when this was a lot of cornfields, based in the same way. I've watched the two from an educator perspective, and you talk about the building, number of buildings, and they've been able to keep it low and things like that, but it's a similar type of growth going on here that they experienced. Maybe even, I don't know if upper administration has talked to them about how they handled all that, I don't know, but that may be a route to take. Like, we're exploding the same way you did, 10 years back, 10, 12 years back.
Okay.
What route did you take?
Other thoughts?
So I've read a lot about how the Warren County Career Center students have been actively involved in some community projects, but I've not noticed anything about just the typical students at Springboro High School having some of those opportunities to engage in community collaborative opportunities. We have such great, I guess with our pride in our town, we have a lot of independent business owners that are so invested in our community. Like, how can we bridge that so we can get our high schoolers rolling their sleeves up and getting messy with what's in our community and continue that pride growing and build momentum for them to be active in their community at an earlier point.
Okay.
That,
So
I think we have lots of opportunities there that we could bring together, get these high schoolers feeling important to the community because they're actively getting messy with it. With all the building and growing we have, there have to be opportunities for those kids to get messy with their learning.
You mean even kids outside of Warren County Career Center?
Yeah, like
our
just
kids here
regular,
in the building?
like to just high school students.
Like even the ones that aren't in this programs at Warren County
Right,
Career Center?
right, I guess they would be non-career center students.
Right, okay.
I love the image, get dirty with your learning, get
Right.
messy with your learning.
Well, it will be
That-
messy.
That,
It'll
well,
be
what is
very
that? That
messy.
implies something to me about what's needed for the future.
Mhm.
It's not, you're expanding on that non-academic aspect of the whole child's experience.
And giving of their talents and their abilities in addition to, their cognitive abilities. So tapping into talents of kids and letting them know that they're smart in more ways than just, a Ohio State test or a COGAT test.
Well, it's very interesting, I'm an N of one, as I say this to you, when I ran the retirement community that Bob referenced in the introduction. Academics rarely came into the conversation when we were looking at employment at all levels. It was who they were, as much as what they knew, if not more. And that's not speaking on an island for employers.
I'm even thinking about opportunities at our new location with the Memory Center. I mean, they're non-career students can still outreach and get in there, and again, I feel like talents could play so as much as the academics piece. We have a lot of opportunities that we need to tap into.
Any more opportunities or threats, anything more on this question before I turn it over to Dr. Summers?
I have a couple.
Okay.
Sorry, I have a couple. As far as athletics, extracurriculars, I think we need to be aware of the cost, the extra cost of those. So I have a band member, marching band.
I'm guessing that is your extra cost, as opposed
Yes.
to the district's extra cost, am I
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
And I don't want to scare anybody off, but including pay to participate fee, it's $1,000. That's
Okay.
her fall marching band. She's also doing winter percussion, yay, another $1,000. So it's very cost prohibitive when the parent hears that. Now, we have some opportunities to work off some of that through Date Dragons as parents.
Okay.
And as they turn 16, children can help. But years ago, our district went to this self-funded model for each athletic or extracurricular activity. And while you say we have strong school spirit, I actually feel like it's torn them apart because we're now competing against each other for the some same fundraising dollars. That goes for PTOs as well. Everybody's out trying to scrap for their own money to fund things because of field levies. PTOs have to provide funding for things. Some lower buildings get much more money than anything up. High school doesn't have a PTO fundraising component, so parents are done. But I think we have to think about how we can bring everybody back together instead of, again, fighting. Like, I've been on PTO boards, I've done all these things, and you're sitting there going, what could be the most creative, fundraiser that no one's thought of?
and you'd like to work on something other than fundraising?
100%, yes, yes. I would like to see that happen. I've also, with College Credit Plus, I don't know, do you guys know much about College Credit Plus? Okay. So it is an unfunded mandate, and it has really cost our district quite a bit because it's exploded. I really would love to see, I know we're bringing a few classes into here, I would love to see more partnerships to make CCP opportunities available here, or marketing what great opportunities we already have in this building. I love the partnership idea because we do have kids who would love that opportunity to not have to pay for certain college classes later on, because as a parent in a public school, taxpayer, everything, I'm torn. I hate that my daughter took it, she did great, helped her go into UC and everything else, but I know it took away from educating her younger siblings. I know the teachers, I don't want to say the teachers don't do it, but there's money that's being used for that. And I think, as a parent, like I said, I'm two-sided on that, because yay, I don't have to pay for 24 credit hours that she took. But we have to market how great our opportunities are here, what we have. And if we can bring those in, I know we're working on that, and it's gonna bring the cost down some, but it's exploded. But we need to showcase all the great opportunities we offer within our own school. I don't think we do a good enough job marketing how great the opportunities within the.
So there's an awareness issue that's floating out there.
Absolutely, and it's hard because CCP is a great opportunity. I mean, English class, you can take 2 semesters of English, be done for 2 years of high school in a college credit. I mean, it's a great thing. That's gonna be hard to fight against, but some parents wanna hear the other components, like it helps with their ACT to stay in the school, where we offer this. But also, again, I'd love to see more partnerships in the building.
Okay. Said you had a couple of things, have you got them?
Let's see. That's 2 of them.
When she goes to the glasses, I
I
know.
know,
I'm
I've been writing notes, so I don't forget to tell you. I think I've covered most of them. I was talking to a parent today, we were talking about this meeting, and we were talking about how we don't feel that sense of togetherness of high school. Elementary school, they do a great job of like pumping these kids, they get to know each other, they get to learn about each other, but they kind of get to high school and they kind of go into their little activities, band, soccer, I was a soccer player too. And then as a parent, you're like, okay, I've got to fundraiser for band, I've got to work dragon team, okay, I've got to work concessions here, but because I've got to pay for this. And my first year of band, I just felt like every week I was handing out money, making food for something. It just felt, I felt very put out, like, oh, I got other stuff, I cannot just do this all the time. And it's because I think we need everybody to go into their self-funded model. And it makes it hard, I know we can't resolve that, but I think we gotta find a way to bring everybody together as.
And realize that the demands are collective. Like, just spinning off of that, whether it's academic, homework, or extracurricular demands, like, I just feel like there's this blinder that, the homework assignments or the assignments that are given are so vast that I don't feel like it's being considered, oh, gosh, you mean every one of those 5 teachers are giving an hour of homework tonight? So, like, looking at that collectively, like, just, I don't know, just a little more compassion for what these kids are dealing with, and realizing all of the demands collectively are contributing to a toll on our kids that it's, when my 15-year-old says, why can't I just be a kid and interact with my friends because I'm spending, I want to be able to get a job, but I can't because of the academic load. Like, when that piece comes out, it's like, ooh, there's got to be a better collective way to let high schoolers be kids sometimes, As much as we want them to be active in the community, where's the time that they can be kids?
I have one last one.
I was gonna say, that kind of reminds me of something I was thinking about looking at the elementary age kids. The things I hear suggest that more unstructured playtime, especially at those younger ages, is better. And I think in part because of some of the academic demands that are being placed. My
Rigor.
second grader has less recess time than I did, we'll say more than 20 years ago. So leave it at that. And
Yeah, they cut recess to add more academics.
it sounds like, in the things I hear, at least in terms of the younger children, are that it actually, we would be serving them better if we actually were having more recess.
Yeah, I mean, my kids, they will have this noodle or something they do to get the energy out, but it's in the room, there's a video, you watch it, you do that, where it's
Still structured.
yeah, they would be better out interacting and learning how to work things out on the playground. I have
need-
one more, can I take
One more, and
It's the very last one.
this is the fourth consecutive one more, and
I
I'm
know,
gonna take it.
I'm
That's
done,
good.
I'm done. After this one is, our music program through junior high and up. We made changes, which I had a role in, I guess, but we do not leave room for kids who take music classes in the junior high, and therefore our high school program is greatly diminished. As big as our high school is, we will barely have 100 kids in the marching band next fall. And I came from the same size school, actually Beaver Creek has 269 kids in their marching band. And when we go to competitions, we have to compete against that sometimes. And it really starts in the junior high because we've restructured there's not always a spot for us. We need to find a way to let kids explore some of these things like language or study hall, whatever it's gonna be, but also music. We need to find a way to get the arts back into our junior high better.
Okay.
And I
Yes.
promise I'm done now.
Okay, thank you. First of all, you want to turn it over to Dr. Summers, but I want to make a comment on what strategic planning is all about. Strategic planning is about where you're going and the trade-offs you have to make, given your limitations in doing so. The input you're giving today is really helpful input to considering some of the trade-offs that are being faced and the consequences of them. Now, I'm going to let Bob take you into where the district is going and get some input on that. So I'll turn it over to him.
First of all, great conversations. We've enjoyed that. I was taking notes for Jim, so he's gonna take notes for me, I hope. to
Yes, that's
keep things
the
moving.
plan. I'm going to make you read them too.
We're gonna have two documents, both of them are input and drafts, so it isn't like we're offering you something to try to sell to you, because that is what we're doing. What we wanna do is get your feel for what's going on in your mind as it relates to these documents. One is gonna be a document around the Springboro School Board's beginning efforts to establish aspiration statements, what they hope to see in the future for the district. So we'll share that with you. These are all drafts. They're not approved, they're a beginning, not an end. So we want to make sure that you know that there's lots of opportunity. One that's at the very beginning is the concept of a future-ready graduate. What is it that a student needs to know to be successful in their future, not as a graduate, not to get to graduation, but to be successful in life? Again, nothing set in stone. It is an attempt to recognize that Springboro does extremely well on what we basically consider state minimum standards. So the question is, can Springboro move beyond the state minimums, which is state graduation requirements and courses and tests? And can it really bring about a competitive advantage for this young people that come here as they go through life? And so the whole student, and I remember some of the input that you had, the whole notion of it isn't just academics, it isn't just extracurricular, it's a combined thing. So what we're gonna have is a conversation about both. One actually has some directions on it, the future ready graduate. I'd love to have you take enough time to circle the ones that you like, cross off the ones that you don't, and write things that we haven't thought of. So that's kind of two parts to this. We're going to start with the aspiration statements.
Thank you.
And I realized that I needed to get one more for myself, otherwise I'm going to be running from memory. So what is on the sheet of paper in front of you right now, at the bottom is what the actual language that the board put up on sticky, or not sticky notes, but I tried to write notes. If you've ever seen my writing, you'll know what I meant by tried to write. We put up, and they identified a series of words, phrases, thoughts that you see captured in the original thoughts. There's an A, B, C, D, and then there's 3 at the bottom. The only difference between A, B, C, D and the bottom ones was the number of votes that they applied to it. So based on that, I put together 5 statements. So I don't want you to think that the board wrote the top 5 statements, but this is a beginning effort to try to put words into what the board was thinking about. And now's your chance to kind of take a look at them and tell me a little bit about what you think of them. Let me walk through them real quickly. One big thing that came out of the conversation in spades was that they wanted the graduates to experience success in their life, and the success should be something that the student desired, not some preordained kind of expectation. So that's not item number 1. Big kind of bold concept that it isn't just about graduating high school seniors, it's about preparing young people to be successful in life. 2, the programs our programs develop the whole student. So it's interesting that you had that same conversation around the whole student, but they said the whole student is defined by what it means to be future ready is a term they didn't necessarily use future ready, but that's one that I'm offering, so that's something that we can modify. Number 3, our exceptional educational experiences make school a desirable place to be for students. In other words, if given a choice, it wasn't mandatory to come to school, you had a choice to come to school, kids would still come. Yeah, they'd want to be here because this is a really cool place to be. And they're learning all the things that we want them to learn as described in 1 and 2, but they actually want to be here, not dragging to school. Okay, some of them are teenagers, so there could be some dragging days, but you get the idea. The 4th one is the very best faculty and staff are attracted and retained at the school. And I think this is where the board really spoke heavily about the importance of talent, the importance of educators in the process in order to be successful. You can have all the plans and all the policies and all the buildings that you want, but if you don't have really good staff, you're in a bind. Number 5, the community investment in our schools fully supports our desired student success. Now it's interesting because you didn't see this before your conversation, but several of you had conversations and worries about the community investment in the school. Can we meet the growing needs? Can we deal with the 100-year-old buildings? Can we do any number of things to manage the size and everything else? So this 5th one is, what's the exchange agreement between the community and the school? If I invest X, what kind of skills and talents do the students get? And we'll call that Y. It's obviously, the school district is not a for-profit company, so you can't say return on investment is I put in $100,000, I get $150,000 out. You don't get money out, but if I put $100,000 in, do I get some great kids or better kids? Or if I put $150,000 instead of $100,000, do I get more student success? What does that look like? Is what I sense is item number 5. You'll see that the term well-resourced facilities and resources were a key part of the conversation. So now it's your chance. What do you think?
Bravo.
Okay.
I mean, we want our kids to want to go to school. invested in our kids to reinvest back into our communities. We want our kids to be our future, and that requires making good decisions and being able to be productive decision makers, to be motivated to reinvest back into Springboro, or go and experience things and then come back and help our community stay strong.
I think the first statement is, I think it's kind of a fluid statement, because as we get older, our goals change, and so success is going to be relative to each moment and experience, so we may not see that success till long term when they look back and say, my experience, like, I can say my college experience, I have a degree I'm not exactly using, but it really helped me go do all these other things I have done. So we may not even see that return till much later when they're our age and they're coming back to these
realizing, yeah.
meetings when we're doing it.
One conversation, obviously, these are the beginning points. There's gonna have to be a discussion of how do you measure whether we're making progress, and there's a whole series of steps, but that's a great one. This one is a little more difficult. It isn't like I have a test score to report to you, so, yeah.
What they call success today may not be what they call success next year, or maybe growing.
You want to hang on to that thought process, because in the next thing, we have an area called wayfinding, teaching kids how to find themselves and find, basically to answer the 4 questions. What do I love to do, my passion? What am I good at? What does the world need, and what will the world pay for? So that we can be productive. So you might find interest in that. Other thoughts?
The whole student idea, and it's been a growing buzzword a little bit in education, but just a couple of days ago, I got an email that there's social emotional learning standards coming out, there's a draft and discussion going on, so it's not going away. And it's not Springboro, it's every school district. Elementaries are really good at it, middle schools get a little less, high schools even less. It's not
Yeah.
just here, it's everywhere. But it's nice to see that in there. I mean, it's gonna become that much more important once the state starts mandating whatever way they decide to. We are happy to teach those social emotional.
And honestly, that scares me. I would rather see districts having the conversation we're having than see state standards enforced upon the districts on that. 'Cause I guess I have very, very little confidence that Columbus will get it right.
I live it every day, I'm with you.
For sure.
So we at least have 2 votes that Columbus isn't really reliable. Right?
Well, they also have to make, Columbus, I don't want to defend Columbus, but they're making a judgment based on everything. They can't look at our district and say, what is our need? And that's the problem I have with Columbus.
I know, but-
They're not asking me in my community what works here, because what works in Columbus doesn't work here. Like, I'm part of a bunch of education
I think
advocacy
the
groups,
problem
and I
in
can't
my
do the same
mind
things.
is, it's less about Columbus as the city and more about the state legislature trying to figure out how to second guess what basically what all the rest of you are doing, and having little or no experience of what you're doing.
Right, and they don't know what our community
I
is
have more
here.
experience of being an educator than most legislators do.
Absolutely.
And that scares me that they're making all the
Decisions for.
Well,
in that regard.
And they don't fund it.
Yeah.
Well, and
Tell you what to
that's a
do.
whole, and I was gonna say, there's this side, and then that's the other hammer with Columbus, and
So,
Washington too.
What is interesting about these aspiration statements, we're talking about the district itself, but also what does the community do to make the environment possible? So, Jim, those legislative things are part of the threats that you would want to grab a hold of. A community like Springboro actually has enough gravitas to actually influence what happens in Columbus from a legislative standpoint. So if you get these big picture kind of objectives right and everybody's behind them, then there's a lot more possibilities than what maybe come out along. Other thoughts?
I like the future ready part, because I also, I think we need to get beyond thinking about getting kids to graduate and what the requirements are, because that's not the goal. The goal is not to stop at high school. The goal is to go beyond. So high school and these graduation requirements shouldn't be a hindrance from going forward, which kind of ties to that first one, is what does success look like? Like, it's not graduating high school, it's going beyond that. So being future ready, and with the first statement, as actually all of them do, they make you realize that it's not just about getting you out of high school, it's about getting you beyond high school. It's just a stepping stone, it's not.
Regardless if you choose to go to a college, or
Right.
you go into the military, or you get married, or whatever it is, there are certain factors that all of our citizens need. I mean, how to make good financial decisions, how to be an educated voter, instead of a social media voter. You know, and that's really concerning when our kids are making more decisions based on what they see on social media than how to be an educated decision maker, you know?
How to solve problems in a variety of contexts.
Absolutely. I mean, we hope that kids continue to college, but we know that's not reality, that some kids are so good working with HVAC systems, are so good with working on cars. We need every bit of those to have a well-rounded, balanced community. So absolutely, I
College may
mean.
be something down the road they aspire to, that it's just not right now. It could be tradesbook, could be, you know, all of those things.
So
Future Ready has a good broad statement to me.
I think when people think future ready, the first thing that comes to mind is college, and we have to be realistic in the sense that, yes, for some, but there may be military for others, or there may be a 2-year, or there may be a travel for a year and come back and be that ready college student.
Kind
Yeah.
of the Steve Jobs approach. Do a little travel and make a few billion.
Right? I mean, that future-ready person who, you know, they're wired for the talents that they have. We can't standardize their future readiness.
I think on top of that, honor those other paths too. You know, I'm an educated person. If I walked out and started wrenching on my car, I wouldn't have a car anymore. I can't fix it, I have to fix a car. So honor the mechanic because it's needed. Honor the HVAC guy because if I wrenched on my HVAC, we wouldn't have heat. You know, I mean, I can't fix that stuff.
Those are the people contributing to the growth and building our
Yeah.
homes in our businesses, in our community.
Yeah, so
Last
I
time
agree
we
that.
checked, doing HVAC wasn't very robotically inclined or outsourced to Chaz.
We
So-
have to prepare for something like that with robots taking over other positions. We've got to be prepared. People got to fix those robots, that's for sure.
That's right. Program them and keep them straight. So that's the first one. Obviously, if you have other ideas, we always are open to them. Jim's been taking notes, we'll take that. These statements will be going back to the board a couple more times, and we'll have some other input to make sure that we kind of get the resonance of the community. This next one, I want to share it with you briefly, and then this is the one that we'll have you circle and cross out and add as you see fit. The reason there's two logical ways to go about discussing what it takes to be future ready, the knowledge and skills. One would be to start with a clean slate, clean sheet of paper, and just write, and you would do some brainstorming and that sort of thing. We've done that with, in particular, business and industry, to start with a blank slate and then go to the notion of a preset. We're opting to start with this set. This set came from a significant investment over lots of years by lots of different organizations and people. So it isn't just made up on the spur of the moment. There's been lots of philanthropic support, but also some learned societies that work through the process. And so it's grouped in 4 sets. One is content knowledge. You would probably recognize content knowledge as being what schools do a lot of. There are 2 things in that section that I'd point out as career-related technical skills and global knowledge, or additions that you would maybe sometimes not see in a particular school. Second one is habits of success. And I've heard a lot of this conversation here tonight around work ethic, self-direction, and perseverance. Perseverance being Brett's tenacity, self-control, positive mindsets, learning strategies. I think somebody actually said, learning to learn, trying to make that continuation. And service, social skills, and responsibilities. The creative know-how, if any of you have ever heard about the 21st Century Skills initiatives that came around, creative know-how really captures that particular area in a big way. Critical thinking, creativity, entrepreneurship, communications, collaboration. It also adds information, media, and technology and services, and somebody said something about personal finance. I found it interesting because the last item, E, is practical life skills. Some basic practical life skills around managing personal life, health, independence. The last one is a little vague, I think, but it's wayfinding, and what that means is how do you find your way through life? And I go back and I'll say it again, those 5, that A through E, is basically saying, what am I passionate about? What am I good at? What's the world need? And what will the world pay for? You can make any number of careers. You can be an entrepreneur, you can be an employee, you can be anything that you want to be to the pay for, but the pay for is a conscious effort to be economically productive. And so what those 5 statements are is what do you need to know in the way of knowledge and skills to be able to figure out who you are, what you're good at, go and find work or entrepreneurial opportunities, and then do that again and again and again as often as you need to throughout your life. So it's a skill set just pretty much like math, science, and English, but it's all around how do I navigate. Think in wayfinding in particular, think of at least for me, I mean, I'm been around a while, and I remember there really weren't too many choices that my parents had to face when I left high school. I had a good ACT score, so I went to Miami University. What were the choices? Well, could have gone to Ohio State. We wouldn't have had Southern New Hampshire, University of Southern New Hampshire. Western Governors University wouldn't have been there. Trade schools barely existed, and if they did, they were pretty rare. There were no coding classes that you could instantly get a certification. Industry certification didn't exist except for in healthcare and education. So you get the idea that it was a very simplistic world, really. It was a 2-step process. And today, there's so many options. Wayfinding is talking about not only what the world looks like, but how do you get educated to get there? How do you find your way through the educational process? So first question is, what do you think? And the second one will be kind of look through the list and see what you like and circle them, and we'd love to get your feedback on that. But first of all, just real quickly, what do you think? Where's your mind? A lot to process. Well, we left it for last so that you would have every chance to have a conversation. And if you want to take it home, it's fine. You can fill it out later and just Photoshop it and send it to us. We'd be happy to take it that way.
I think it's good that there's a recognition of how important 2, 3, and 4 are, given how challenging it is, because like you're talking about, that simplistic history, it wasn't terribly long ago, frankly.
Yeah.
And the purpose of schools for the previous century was almost exclusively content knowledge. And so that's not an easy shift to make, to include those other 3 in there.
The rate of change has increased so much recently from how the rate of change was kind of as we were going through school. Change in expectations, assumptions that are being made, how technology is driving our decision makers, opportunities for the diversity of the future. No wonder our kids are overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
It's overwhelming for us as adults, and so how they handle that knowing that they're coming from different family structures, the diversity of family structures, and the socioeconomic needs, that diversity too. So I think this opens up so much more opportunities to support the aspirations.
Other thoughts? To me, the number 4 is interesting, because I'll go to like our high school's college and career night, and it was a joke, and I'm, not 15, 20 years ago out of high school, but the joke was you either went to college, you went to military, worked at GM, and now it's like the paralysis by analysis. You go to college and career night, it's like there's 50,000 different things, and they get overwhelmed, and they just go any, mini, miny, mo, or they just don't do anything. It's like they stand there and stare. So.
And $1.4 trillion in college debt.
Yeah.
Hanging over the country
So-
like a knife. Yeah, there's all kinds of interesting things. That's what this section is trying to avoid.
Yeah, and begin to expose them, like in my middle school, we do experiential field trips with 7th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Just get them, so it's not the first time they're seeing is not as a senior with 2 weeks to decide, and 2 months to decide. They've seen a lot of different fields, dripped on them for 6 years, and now they've got a little better, conscious of what is truly out there, because it is so much, stuff.
And it is okay that they don't know what they want to do. It's
Yeah.
totally okay, because,
As long as they're still future ready.
right, if they're adaptable. I mean,
And they have some logical way to explore that world till they eventually do find something.
Productively.
we talk about, like, career day at the high school, we talk about how a lot of kids think of the typical doctor, lawyer, teacher, accountant, engineer.
Whatever TV shows popular.
Right, but they don't understand that, like, if you say I want to be a teacher, well, what does that look like? Preschool teacher, principal, professor, counselor? They don't understand that a middle school teacher may never want to be with elementary school kids, or may not want to be, they don't understand there's all these minutiae. And I always try to tell my kids that pursue something you like, because it can blend into a lot of things. I put on this, I'm one of the people in charge of STEM Fest here, and we just want people to show that there is STEM stuff in every single thing you do. Every career has some component of STEM. It may not be obvious to you, but when you start looking at it, we have someone who come and they design patterns for backpacks. Well, that's creative, but it's part of STEM, because you're using computers, you're doing this. So the kids need to be able to explore it, but not feel like they have to make a decision the second they go, because they say the average college student changes their major 6 times. That's a statistic I heard when I went to college a few years ago. 20-something. But they're still saying that when you go to orientation. So kids need to understand that not everything has to be decided today, and you may never know what you're going to be exposed to. And see, I went to high school with a bunch of kids that wanted to be engineers, and so we got to school and was like, oh, this is what that is? Yeah, no, that's not what I want. Because they hadn't been exposed to it, and I hope we can, like you said, expose them to these things as they go, so they can get a good idea of, oh, to be an engineer means this, but oh, mechanical engineer maybe, biomedical maybe, just the differences they can see out there.
So, and by the way, wayfinding is not about making the choice, it's about having the skill sets necessary to make those choices, and that's good clarification.
The habits of success, where I struggle with this, is a lot of that seems to come with maturity. Different kids at different times, like I have a kid who will never go and ask for help, will never, she doesn't have initiative in one area, but she might in another. So some of this seems like, some of this will come with maturity, and it's not always taught at school. It's part of your family culture, your independence.
I think some of this, it's funny, when you work with business and industry, they say, look, I just want somebody that will show up on time,
Amen.
drug-free, a few other things, and we'll worry about the other content. But you think of habits of mind, but in school, what happens? You get a D on a test and you get credit for the course. If you did D work in the business world, you'd be fired. So it's little subtle changes that we can't make on our own. I mean, these are huge changes, but there are subtle differences between what the world is is expecting and what the school expects, numbers of days of absence. And obviously they're children, so we've got to balance that. I think that's habits of success in many ways. The other one is often we see discussions around allowing kids to try and fail and not have that count against them. But they learn to fail, and what do you do when you fail? Well, you got to pick yourself up and you do it again.
You have to learn there's consequences for the choices, and I don't mean always severe ones, like my daughter doesn't want to do her math. I always say to her, I already took that math class, so my day's gonna look the same tomorrow, so it's up to you whether you finish it or not, because I'm still gonna do it. You'll have consequences at school that you have to pay. I'm good with hiring class number.
So I think in item 2, it's more about that whole thought process of what the school does or doesn't.
Yeah, it's hard to instruct and.
Yeah, one thing, a friend of mine said, I wake up in the middle of the night in fear that because we did this work, that someday I'll see a course called Perseverance. And somebody will have a Perseverance course. It says it shouldn't be a course, it's part of life.
Well, it concerns me too, because I think a lot of teachers feel that they have to do some parenting skill stuff during the day. I'm not saying we shouldn't, I don't know how we find a way to teach it, integrate other than these small ways, which I think is a good foundation, but when you look at the big picture like that, it seems overwhelming that it does come with some maturity. Some kids are gonna walk up to somebody and ask a question, and other kids are gonna hide in the back and say, please don't call on me. Adults are that way too, so.
Absolutely. That is what our program is tonight. We appreciate you coming out, and we hope that it was valuable to you. If you have other things that you want to let us know, feel free to grab a card from us. We'd be happy to hear from you on the way through. This is a process, it's not an event. By the way, the strategic plan that will come out the other end is going to have lots of things around the basic conversation around where are we today, where can we be in the future, and I use the word can be because Springboro really has the potential to go wherever they want. They're not stuck with a crisis. And also some processes that will allow all the people that need to be making the decisions to be able to make highly aligned decisions to get to that point. And hopefully you'll have a chance to review those documents as we go through as well. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.